at the weigh-in for Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou, a cross-sport fight as it was, came the news that Mike Tyson, 57 years old, will fight Jake Paul, 27, 26. I had my head down working at the boxing event, trying to juggle things. Chisanga, how was that accepted back at home as a fan of MMA, UFC, boxing, the whole combat sports? I wasn't even able to take it seriously at the time. I mean, I know you was working as well, but how did you feel seeing the news that was happening?
Well, for context, I was upstairs in the canteen having my lunch, so I missed the announcement. I came back downstairs and pandemonium had ensued.
Yeah.
People were ordering graphics, people were ordering tailor tapes, and people were thinking when they could take the holidays. Actually, about it. But I think, like in Saudi, the overriding reaction was just pure and utter shock. We couldn't process the information that we received, and couldn't comprehend the fact that at 57 years old, nearly 4 years after he shuffled around the ring against a fellow boxing great in Roy Jones Jr., that Mike Tyson would be lacing up the gloves again against a 27-year-old in his prime. I'll call him a professional boxer just for respect's sake. Whether I believe that truly or not is another thing. Jake Paul. When I was trying to process it, I was left scratching my head. I was just thinking, what do either man gain from this? And I'm sure you have some very strong views on it, but I just couldn't believe the fact that Mike Tyson, who I think at a UFC event not too long ago, or no, it wasn't at a UFC event, just he was out and about in New York, was pictured walking about with a cane.
Yeah.
That he's been convinced to lace them up, and not lace them up against somebody who's of similar age to him, lace them up against somebody he's old enough to be their dad. What was your reaction?
Well, it is difficult because there is a sense of hypocrisy that I can't shy away from, because I can't stand most of the influencer boxing that happens, but our website benefits massively from it.
Of course.
I remember when the first, was it KSI Logan Paul happened in Manchester?
Yes.
So that was absolutely record-breaking numbers for us at the time. And I remember I don't even think I managed to get into the York Hall build-up to that, because there were kids climbing on the roof trying to get in. Yeah. And every one of those big shows have done record-breaking numbers. You know, when there's a good British title fight, sometimes even a world title fight in this country, our desk will say to me, right, you go and do it. They might say to you, oh, no need for you to go, Chiz or Jack. You guys love boxing, you want to be there, but your office shift's more important. Yeah. When these fights come around, you guys get sent. You know, some will have 3 or 4 people at ringside for these events because they are huge. So I understand the hypocrisy of it. We benefit from these things. But for this one, and even with the YouTube ones, as long as they're fair and 50-50 fights, I have no real problem with them. When Jake Paul was knocking out welterweight wrestlers or a basketball player, or even the other week in Puerto Rico, clearly a man who should not be allowed anywhere near a boxing ring against him.
With his name, Ryan Borland, I think it was?
That's your man, yeah. They are not fair fights, and someone might be able to say, oh, well, when a young prospect fights a journeyman, journeymen are incredibly talented boxers. Yeah. They may have 100 defeats on their record, but they could have won probably 80 of those if they'd wanted to. It's dangerous, because he wants to, it's not as if he's a skilled boxer who's dancing around the ring. He wants to knock people out for highlight reels and for viral hits, and in doing so, he's risking damaging anyone who's not in an fair fight. So that's the stuff that worries me. Thankfully, I think some of the stuff that's gone on, certainly in the press conferences where, you know, some of these things have like girls from adult entertainment. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I adore adult entertainment. However, when we're being told that influencer boxing is the future and it's the way we get young kids into boxing, that can't be the case. You either say, well, this is influencer boxing, where we're going to use famous people from all walks of life, including adult entertainment. And we're doing that because they have a huge following and lots of people will buy to watch them. But essentially we have to say that there was a lady who won a fight a little while ago and pulled her top up.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Now, that's not all of the shows. That was one show. But, you
A lot
can't...
of them are leaning into that angle of it.
Of course they are, yeah. Now, if by all means go and explore that avenue and make money from that avenue, but then you have to make it an over-18s event, and parents have to be saying to their children it isn't a place for you to be going. I do feel that there is almost a split there, and out of respect for the main event guys, you can see train properly and they conduct themselves usually in a proper manner. It's the undercard guys that are just trying to make a name for themselves and make some money. But then the main events that we've had recently, I think have been incredibly poor quality.
Yes, to say the least.
Jake Paul and Tommy in Saudi was an incredibly dull fight, lots of holding, and then KSI and Tommy.
Yeah, that was another hold-a-thon as well.
An incredibly dull, boring fight. So we are seeing that these guys are great knocking out men twice their age, half their size, from a different sport.
Yeah.
When they fight each other, like in any 50-50 fight, whether you're at a white-collar show, an amateur bout, when there's a chance you might lose, fights can be boring because everything's on the line. So I did think that before Tyson and Jake Paul had announced, I felt, and you're more than welcome to tell me I'm wrong, that it was almost dying off a little bit.
Yeah, I know what you mean, especially from the Jake Paul perspective, because Jake was very crafty with how he cultivated the followings of his early boxing career, because he picked a feud with UFC fighters and he was poking the bear, and poking the bear Dana White as well. But that's died down, and you see the interest when he's fighting quote unquote boxers. I mean, with all due respect to the gentleman who he knocked out, Ryan Borland, I mean, not the best pugilist on the planet, but you see it when he's fighting quote unquote boxers. The interest is low. Interest is low. So part of me, I'll give Jake Paul his props. He's a very smart man.
It's been genius what he's done. And there's been lots of moments, I'm sure, when you've interviewed him, especially the way he took on the UFC over pay and Dana White. And there's been times where he's spoken to me about female boxing and how he's tried to push Serrano and Katie Taylor. There are dozens of interviews where he sits down with us and is insightful and has good intentions. And then he talks about how he's going to be a real boxer and he's going to be a world champion. And then he fights a 57-year-old man who is clearly should not be allowed near a boxing ring.
This leads into the point I was going to make, that I think he's seen that the interest in him going the traditional boxing route is nil, pretty much. Yeah, well, other than his diehard fans, although he has, I don't know how many million subscribers he has on YouTube, but that obviously would translate to a lot of people, maybe fill out a small stadium or what have you. But I think he saw the waning interest and he thought, like, what's the biggest thing that I can do?
Yeah.
Who's the biggest name available to me, who I can get, who I can beat? And then obviously him and his team settled on Mike Tyson, who I think they obviously had some sort of relationship beforehand.
It's been on his podcast
a couple of times. So I'm sure that wasn't that hard to put together. But yeah, that's my reasoning and theory as to why he's gone for Mike Tyson, because quite honestly, nobody gives a rat's behind about him as a traditional boxer.
Yeah, I think it's very rare in boxing that the whole sport is united. You know, we have rival broadcasters, we have rival promoters, we have rival gyms, and they've all got their own interest. I'm yet to see a credible person come out and say, this is good for boxing, this is good for influencer boxing. Nobody worth listening to has said this is a good thing. And I really wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen in the end.